Hello! So it has been a little while since I've made a video on reviewing anything, and unfortunately I've not been able to get a hold of the B&M sets myself because of the whole COVID situation and not being able to go outside, and it's not really a necessary need at the moment. But luckily, my girlfriend works right near a B&M in her hometown, so she was able to pick up all the sets for me. However, since I wasn't allowed to go and see her, I wasn't able to get a hold of the sets, so the reviews will be coming soon. However, I've decided to review a little model kit that I bought from a friend of mine that I worked on during the summer to keep me from dying from boredom. So, as you've probably guessed, this is in fact the Dalek Emperor, which was designed by NDW Design, aka Nathan Ward, aka Dalekidea, who's been a YouTuber for roughly around 10 years now, as I remember watching him when I was a kid. And he used to produce little custom figures that were really cool, and now he's moved on to creating products like this, custom Peter Cushing Daleks, and much, much more. But this itself is a fantastic piece, as it's not just a really good model of the Dalek Emperor from Evil of the Daleks, you can also display it with the 5-inch character options range, as you can see here. I'm so grateful that Nathan Ward has created this masterpiece, as it is such a beautiful piece to look at. Originally, when it arrived, it was all unpainted and unfinished and unsanded, so there was a lot of stuff you had to do to fix this up and make it look decent, so that was the first job I had to do. Next, I primed the body and the head and all the hemispheres, just to make sure when I apply the paint, I had something to hang on to, as if you just applied it straight to the model, it would peel off over time. I then sprayed the body black and the head black as well, and then I went ahead a few days later to spray the body. I haven't taken photos from each step, as I didn't really have much time and I was so excited building this thing that I lost track of time. But that doesn't really matter, as Nathan has put some tutorials on YouTube, so I totally recommend having a look at them if you get stuck, as they helped me out quite a bit when making this model. So the link for his channel will be in the description below. And yeah, so without further ado, let's review this thing. So firstly, taking a look at the detail, there is so many layers to this, with all the gratings on the side, the hemispheres. It's just absolutely fantastic with all the amount of detail that's been put into this, especially on the head. This was actually 3D modelled by a chap called Edward Felix, and Nathan asked his permission to actually produce these as models so he could sell them on to fans like me. And after he was given permission, Nathan actually went ahead and 3D printed all the parts. He then moulded them in silicon, and then he casted them in a fast cast resin, which is better than just selling the kits as 3D prints, as it would have meant a lot of sanding down, because you get all those little ridges between all the sections, which would have been time consuming, and for someone like myself, I probably would have just given up halfway through. But I'm happy to say that there's none of that to do here, and the body is nice and clean and absolutely fantastic. And all the little parts that come with this set are pressure cast, so that there is a bubble-free finish, as usually as you use resin there can sometimes be air bubbles. I'm not an expert myself, but apparently that can happen, so I can confirm here there is actually no air bubbles in this at all, which makes the model even better, as I don't have to go in with some filler to fill in any holes that might have appeared. So most of the paints that have been used on this model are actually from Halfords. It's their own brand of spray paint that I've used here. I basically had to mask off different sections of the body just so I could spray in certain parts black and certain parts silver, which was a bit of a pain and was a bit of a struggle at first. I had to go in several times just to make sure I got most of the parts the correct colour, and then when all that was over I moved on to the head. I basically sprayed that black, and when it came to spraying silver I masked off all the little ridges so it would keep that black detail there. Then after that, I basically painted the dome section in a green colour using a paint from Humbrol. It has come across as a bit glossy, but I think it does work quite well here. It did come out quite thick, but taking a look at it, it doesn't actually look that bad. I might come back later on and clean up some of the edges on here, as they're a little bit uneven, but I think it works well for now. The eye stalk itself is another separate piece that is fitted into a hole in the head, and it doesn't really have any articulation at all, as the original prop didn't really move at all, and at the end of the day, it is accurate to what we saw on screen, so I'm not really that bothered about it not having any articulation at all. And then moving down to the Hemispheres, I've left them in the primer colour, as I wasn't really too sure. I mean, some photos depict it as being very cream, just like the dome is, or a very dark orangey colour, but that is on concept art and several different things, so it's not true to what was seen on the show, but for now I've left it as it is. So when comparing this to the character options toys, he doesn't really look that tall, but when putting it on a higher base, he does look a lot taller, as the prop itself was on a plinth. So really, at the moment, he does look a bit silly on the shelf, I'll grant you that. But my plan is at some point is to try and make a steady enough base, possibly, I mean, if I have the time. And he does look so much better when sat on something taller. Again, the prop was actually not that big, it's just camera trickery to make it look as twice as big as what it was in the show. But still, it doesn't take anything away from this kit. It's still a fantastic model, and I love it nonetheless. Also, unlike the one that is used in the show, this model kit doesn't actually come with any of the piping that was attached to the Emperor, and it doesn't really bother me too much, as this itself would look a bit silly in my opinion, because there's nothing to attach it to. I suppose if someone was to make a diorama, you could probably find a way of trying to connect it all in. Just like the base, it might be something I might try and do in the future. For articulation, the head can turn if you want it to, but I usually prefer not doing that at all, as it can make the paint rub off, and I don't really want to be doing that at all. So I'm going to be just keeping it as a still model, as the prop itself in the show didn't actually move at all either. And that's pretty much it for articulation. Now, one thing I would like to point out is the build-up of paint on the right side. Now, unfortunately, that was my doing when applying the primer. Unfortunately, I held the can too close and it turned out like this. Now, this was something that I was really excited to do, as it's something I haven't really done in a very long time with model kits or anything like that on its own. So I did unfortunately rush this, and it doesn't look that good, unfortunately, on mine. So this is something I will probably rectify later down the line when I've got free time. I may just actually take all the paint off the body itself, as there is a few minor gripes that I'm not a huge fan of. Same on the head, I might take it apart and take the paint off, try and reapply it this time, and take more time on this, as this was something I did sort of rush when putting this together, because I was really excited at getting this, and I really wanted it on the shelf next to my character options figures. And yeah, this is probably something that I would say to any model builder out there: do not rush these projects, take your time with them, as you're going to have all the time in the world to make these, and the more time you put into them, the much better they're going to look, if you get what I mean. So that is my bad, unfortunately. Overall, this is actually just a fantastic piece on its own. A model piece like this is pretty much a dream come true for us collectors, as this is something that character options would probably never actually do. Because of the way the toy world is at the moment, there's probably going to be no chance at all of this ever being released as an official toy. This is probably one of the best replicas of the Dalek Emperor ever made, and when pairing it with the character options figures, it's pretty much in scale with them, and it looks fantastic on the shelf next to my Daleks, and hopefully one day I'll probably try and find a way to create the base just to make it look a bit taller on the shelf. And it's honestly something that I recommend any model builders out there to actually grab, as it's a fantastic piece to own. If you want one, try and contact Nathan yourself or look on his Etsy page. Unfortunately, he hasn't got any on there at the moment from what I can tell, but they do turn up on there from time to time, so keep an eye out. That's pretty much it for now. The next reviews I'll be taking a look at are the new wave of B&M figures that have hit the stores in the previous months. And yeah, I hope you all stay safe, stay well, and because it's nearly Christmas, Merry Christmas.